Hello, everyone. We are back today with Jackie Clark, our breeding and puppy program manager, who is here with Sawyer, who has grown a little bit since we last saw her a couple of weeks ago. She has legs now. She's still a smaller girl, but she is growing. So we're just going to give people a couple of moments here to jump on, and then we will get started. But for those that are online and watching, Jackie, do you want to just share a little bit about you and also where Sawyer is from for people who may not have watched the last episode?
Certainly. So I am, as Tara said, I'm PAD's puppy raising and breeding program manager. And so I get to work both with our amazing parent dogs and also kind of see how their offspring develop through the puppy raising program. And I'm also, as part of my work, responsible for making sure that we have enough genetic diversity come in. I like to think of the different traits that our dogs have as being like spices in a spice cupboard. So I'm the one that needs to make sure that the spice cupboard is well stocked, and that when we need to make adjustments to bring more of a certain trait in or to control for a certain trait that we don't want, that we have that available to us. So Sawyer has come to us along with another puppy named Franny from Australia through an exchange that we're doing with a program there. With Australia being a rabies clean country and Canada being a rabies dirty country, we cannot send puppies to Australia. So we have a couple dogs on the program that we're growing out for various programs in Australia. And in exchange for a fully grown up, medically cleared breeding dog, the program in Australia is sending us 6 breeding quality puppies with different pedigrees. So one of the fun things with Sawyer's pedigree is I think it's a 5-time great grandmother of hers is a dog named Asia, who is one of our foundation girls. And so she goes back to Asia and her son Tibet, and then to Santini, one of our other foundation girls that Tibet was bred to. So it's really nice to kind of see those lines coming back around.
And traveling all over the world. So
all over the world.
All over the world. So so we are here right now with Jackie Clark, who is our breeding puppy program manager, and Sawyer. And so for those of you that are watching online right now, you can type questions into the comment section on Facebook Live. And if you're watching on Zoom, you can type questions into the Q&A box. And Carol Ann has chimed in and said, thanks, Jackie, for sharing your knowledge, and Sawyer, and also mentioned that Asia was Bronx's grandma. So Bronx is Carol Ann's service dog. So all of these lovely PADS dogs are somehow, it feels like they're all related to each other in some way or another. I love all those little family trees and connection points. So, but with that, Jackie, I do have a little slide here. So we're going to bring it up in just a second. But before we do that, if you just want to kind of talk a little bit about, so we were here a couple of weeks ago, and Sawyer was working on kind of her bed queue, and I noticed that Nav is settling nicely next to you on the bed today. But do you want to just kind of talk about what's happened in your world in the last couple of weeks and some of the highs and challenges and, you know, kind of things that have happened in Sawyer's world? And then I can bring up that slide that we prepared.
Sure. Yeah, Nav is here with us for 2 reasons. One, I had promised some puppy raisers and sitters that she would probably make a guest appearance. But the other one is that it's really important that Sawyer learn how to work with another dog around and vice versa. So this is good practice for them, where Nav can practice a little bit of patience on her bed, which she definitely can use. And Sawyer gets used to concentrating on me and working when there's another dog around. And so Sawyer's 18 weeks old now. One of the significant things that happens is at about 16 weeks old, these puppies pass out of what's called the critical socialization period. And so prior to 16 weeks, they acquire learning very quickly like a sponge. And usually it's as little as one positive or one negative experience kind of sets the pattern for the rest of their life. As they pass out of the critical socialization period, we start to see learning slow down a little bit, but also we need to be a little bit more mindful of the way that they're responding to things. So one of the reasons that Tara and I and Meredith had been talking about doing a series where we follow a dog along is it's really easy to get lost in kind of the Facebook or the Instagram, like everything's perfect, look at what I post, everything, is coming up roses. But there are challenges that go along with every step of the way. And also with every puppy, there are different challenges. So we really want to make sure to highlight both, the things that are kind of ticking along as they should in Sawyer's life, and also some of the challenges that we've had. So in the past month, bed has been coming along really well. The last time I was with you all, we paid Sawyer pretty constantly to the bed throughout, and then we'd kind of try and trick her off. We call it the fairy game, like, oh, look, there's a fairy over here. And so the dog comes off to investigate, but there's nothing there. And so they run back to their bed because that's where the value is. And the value now is so strong in Sawyer's bed that she brings toys and just piles them on her bed. So anywhere that she goes in the house and she finds a toy, she brings it back to her bed and she lays on her bed and chews it. If I'm working at the computer, she'll choose to go and lay on her bed, which is perfect because it gives her kind of that really nice anchor point, and it patterns in, that settled behavior. And so one of the struggles that we've been having right since she came is a tremendous amount of barrier frustration. So if she is inside kennel, if she is on the other side of the gate, if I go downstairs and she stays upstairs, we have a screaming meltdown. She just is not equipped to deal with that at this point. And so one of the things that the bed is helping us to build is a little bit of that independence. And we tend to often think when we're training dogs, if she's struggling in a kennel, I'm really going to work hard on the kennel. But really one of the things that I need her to develop off the bat is a feeling of, the world doesn't end if there are feet of space between us. So one of the kind of little milestones that we had on the weekend is we've got a big island in our kitchen. I was on one side working in the kitchen cooking, and I had the dog's bed on the other side of the island so they couldn't see me. And she would choose to go around behind a visual barrier to be out of my sight, but because the bed had a ton of value. And so that's a really important milestone because it's her starting to develop those skills. And every single morning that we've had her, as soon as she hears us stir in the morning, she screams in her kennel. And so my husband gets up before me. He's been letting her out, and it's been a big production. And this morning was the first morning he got up. She didn't scream. I got up and brushed my teeth. She didn't scream. So progress can often seem painfully slow. But we actually, need to mark these little milestones of, she's not at the point right now where I could put her in the kennel when she is wide awake and just walk away and she would do it quietly, but she's acquiring all of those skills that are going to get her there.
That is amazing. So for those of you that have just joined us, we're here with PADS breeding and puppy program manager, Jackie Clark and Sawyer. And if you want to ask questions, you can type them into the Q&A box if you're watching on Zoom, or and the Q&A box is just in the bottom, or if you're on your phone in the top right corner, just hit the dots and you'll see Q&A under there. If you're watching on Facebook Live, you can just type them into the comment section and we'll try and answer them. But also just type in and tell us where you're watching from. I see lots of names I don't recognize. And so it's always nice for us to know where people are watching from. So feel free to type that in too. With that, I'm just going to bring this up. So Jackie provided me with this lovely little summary, and let me just see if I can do this in a way that is going to work. Hang on one sec. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Jackie and I were talking about this, and this is just like a slightly condensed version of what Jackie sent me of kind of the 4-month milestones. that we're looking at. So hopefully everybody can see those up on the screen right now. So, and I'm realizing that Jackie probably can't see them because she's sitting on the other side of the room. So we're talking about kind of milestones. And I think this is something that as a community, I know certainly amongst kind of our leadership team, et cetera, we've talked about is that often both as staff and I think also volunteers and experienced volunteers, we all see milestones a little bit differently the more times we go through a cycle. And so what we're looking at for kind of our first, and Jackie, I'm just going to read these off and then I'll let you chime in and add whatever under each one. So the first milestone mission that we're looking at is under socialization, is exposure. And so the pup has been happily exposed to hundreds of people, dozens of dogs in a wide variety of common life situations, both inside and out. And we put a lovely asterisk next to the word exposed. So I'm going to let Jackie build on that and talk about what that asterisk refers to and just exposure in general.
So socialization kind of as a concept has really gone through quite a dramatic shift in the training world over the past, say, 5 years. And it used to be when people would say, your dog has to meet hundreds of people, your dog has to meet hundreds of dogs. They meant like face to face, whether your puppy was comfortable with it or not, you were going to get into direct contact. And, you know, what we've all come to realize as a training community is often then when we had puppies present later on with problems and we said, well, this is a socialization problem, it was actually because we had overwhelmed puppies. So what we actually want is we want the puppies to be able to observe these things at a distance that they're comfortable with and have a positive experience. So for instance, when we walk around our block, if we see a dog walking by, we're going to give them a little bit of space. So whether that means stepping into our non-busy suburban streets or stepping off kind of onto the grass, we're going to give them a little bit of space. And then I'm going to treat Sawyer for kind of acknowledging that the dog is there and then looking at me. And so she's learning that dogs are not really something to be excited about and also not something to be scared about. And so when we say we want her to have seen tons of dogs and tons of people, that's exactly it. We want her to have seen them and noticed them, but then for her to have learned that they're not really anything to get excited about. And kind of the thing that's in the environment that is most important to her is the person on the other end of the leash.
Okay, so next up is manners. So mission number 1 is prevention. And so the pup understands basic commands and skills starting in class and practice at home. And the raiser uses those commands and skills plus engaged supervision to educate our pup about house manners. So talk about what do we expect from a 4-month-old puppy in terms of first, maybe those skills that have been started in class, but then what that looks like within the context of manners.
So one of the really big skills that we're going to have started in class is the bed. And we're going to start that pretty much the first time a puppy comes into puppy class. And the reason being is, as I said, it gives the dog somewhere to be in the space and a very clear, sorry, I'm going to turn you a little bit so that you can see Sawyer, and a very clear understanding of where the value is and where they should be spending time. So the other kind of extension on that is the kennel. And so you can see here, we have done quite a bit of work over the past couple of weeks too in finding that the value is in the kennel. So we are starting to practice these skills at home during the day. We're practicing keeping our feet on the floor, and that's still coming a lot from management of the situation. So we're not putting tasty tidbits close to the edges of the counter. We're practicing not chewing things that don't belong to us. And again, that is still partly management. But that being said, the house is far more open than it was when we talked a month ago. So you can see she now has access to the living room, and we're not worried that she's getting up on the furniture because she was so patterned into staying on the floor. Sometimes the kids' rooms are open. The bathroom is always open at this point because she is not a toilet paper stealer. But again, if she was a puppy that had learned once that she could grab the toilet paper roll and have a great time, then that would still be something that we were managing. So those are kind of the big ones that we're working on at home right now. And then kind of my big hill I will die on with kind of any age puppy that's in puppy raising, is we're really working on that daytime sleep as being kind of a critical part of our manners and behavior management, because tired puppies are naughty puppies.
All right. And then our last one, building skills. So that development and defocus, and you touched on this a little bit, but so basically that when not actively training, the pup can hang out calmly without being the center of attention. And also that our raisers understand how to help the pup succeed when he's relatively calm. Coping with new situations is a key skill for an assistance dog. Doubts and concerns the pup has and how to help conquer them, and that long-term avoidance is not helpful. So development and defocus. Do you want to build on that a little bit? And I'll stop sharing my screen here now so that people can
So
see.
some of the things in there about how do we help our puppy. So that is, it's human nature to ask ourselves, what don't I want the dog to do? But we don't often ask ourselves, what do I want the dog to do? So how we help our puppy is we ask, what do I actually want the puppy to do in this situation? So, the kitchen was a good example. There's a whole bunch of things I don't want my puppies to do in the kitchen. I don't want them to be underfoot while I'm cooking because it's dangerous. Don't want them to have their head in the dishwasher. I don't want them to have their face in the oven as I'm opening it. I don't want them to have their feet on the counter. But those are a whole lot of don'ts that if I try and teach each one individually, it's going to be like a game of whack-a-mole. We're never going to get anywhere. So instead, what do I want my dogs to do? Well, for our household, I don't really want the dogs in the kitchen at all. And so I'm going to set up the situation so that they are not coming in the kitchen. So again, having the bed on the other side, that's how I'm going to help these guys to make that decision. If they needed a little bit of reminding, I might tether them to something so that they didn't actually have the option to come into the kitchen, and then reinforce them with treats when they chose to be on the bed instead. But it's really doing things like that to help. And the other would be, we talked about adding space from things. So if passing another dog really close is going to be problematic, I'm going to either add some space, or I'm going to use my lure, which we've learned in class to produce. So the lure would be that I've got a treat in my palm, and basically it's just like a magnet. Like I want her nose to stick right on that treat, no matter what happens. So that kennel is super reinforced. So I can use that to manage her through situations that are difficult. And for her, she's a quarter golden retriever, and the quarter golden retriever comes out almost exclusively in the fact that her entire body wiggles when she sees people. So again, I'm going to set her up for success by practicing disengaging from people at a distance where they aren't overwhelming, and probably not letting a lot of people kind of get down and tell her how beautiful and special she is, which will drive that behavior in a different direction.
I love how you lure her out, but then the instant that she gets her treat out of the kennel, she's like, I'm going right back in, which definitely shows that value is building in the kennel. So you talked a little bit about kind of her barrier frustration. I noticed at one point there, you actually closed the kennel door. I don't know if people can see that super clearly on the camera, but talk about what that building value in the kennel looks like right now, and kind of how you're kind of addressing some of that barrier frustration.
She's like, I'm sure you're trying to trick me when you tell me to come out. So the building the value in the kennel is separate from times when she has to be kenneled. If she absolutely has to be kenneled and there is no route for her to obtain reinforcement for me, we're going to set this up differently. But this is, structured training sessions that we're setting up. I was saying to puppy class the other night, because we were working on this, I love these muddy paw mats, which are supposed to be for picking up kind of the mud and water off your shoes when you come in, but the treats kind of get lost in them. So they means she has to snuffle around for it a bit. But let's show them the first step. Okay, so the first step would be that I am just going to, and she's farther along than this, so I'll have to hold her back, but I would just throw some treats into the back of the kennel for this, and she would go in and she would get them, and probably at that point she would, no, not you, bed. She would pop right back out. So that would be fine. That would be the first step. And then when we notice that she's starting to think, okay, maybe I can stay in a little bit more, then I'm just going to keep adding some treats in there. so that she's learning, you know, like, hey, being in here isn't such a bad deal. And you can see she has to search quite a bit through this, which is really good. And then the next step would be, good girl, is, I'm gonna hold you for a second, is to let her drive in. So we want her at the point where she's thinking, this is really where I want to be. So we're gonna let her drive in, and then I'm actually gonna close the gate behind her and treat her while she's in there. And then so the gate closing doesn't become a predictor of bad things. The gate closing becomes a predictor of good things, because now this game only pays off if you're in the kennel and the door is closed. And so this is something that, you know, I would work on if I am, let's say I'm on a Zoom meeting that only requires 80% of my attention. I would have her in a kennel and I would be working on just reinforcing her periodically when the door is closed, kind of opening the door, giving her the option to come out. She says, nope, I really want to stay in there. So we close the door again. When my husband and I play cards, quite often we'll play this game so that she is really building value for being in the kennel is a good thing. And then the next stage, I'm just going to take her leash off because we don't need it here. Out. Good girl. So I'm going to use my treat to get her out. So the next stage would be, I'm actually going to close the gate most of the way. And now you can see the, oh, did you push it all the way closed? The value is really for being in the kennel. And so I know you think you closed it. Come on. She's like, now I've confused myself. So the value is really in being in the kennel. So there you go. She opens the gate for herself to let herself in. Gate closes, and now the kennel pays, so that she's really developing a bit of a drive to be in there. And then, okay, now on your back. Sorry. Sorry. Good girl. Then we're going to make it even more difficult. So we're going to put an obstacle in the way. And we want to see her work her way around how to get in. And so it may be that she walks around the kennel if she has the option. What you gonna do? But you see, there you go. She's found her way in. We're going to close the door. And so now she is really seeking out getting in there. So it's not a case of, you know, she's being lured in or anything anymore. She's really making the decision that that's where she wants to be. And then we'll start building in movement. So I would have her in with the door closed. I would get up, kind of walk across the room. While I was at my farthest point, that's where I would say yes. And then I would come back and treat her. And so she's not learning that it's me coming back that's getting her told that she's getting a treat. It's when I'm moving away that she's getting reinforced. And then we would build that at varying distances and increasing our time until she's like, really, the kennel's no big deal. Now, if there are times where the kennel just is not an option and we're not training. So, you know, as I was mentioning about sleep, I really want her to have probably a 2-hour nap in the morning and like a good 2 to 3 hours sleep in the afternoon. And so if she was going to be in the same room as me, I didn't bring it over, but I have a sheet and I would just cover the kennel in a sheet. And so it's like, now we've totally changed the layout, and the understanding is reinforcement just isn't available in this space. So I would probably sit with her and help her fall asleep at this point, but I would not be using my food to help get her to sleep, because I want to keep kind of that safety net of being able to put her in a kennel separate from my training plan. And I don't want my training plan to fall apart because she's had an experience that she doesn't like in the kennel. And I have to say, kind of as we're going through this, for 4 months, there's not a lot of behaviors that she has on cue yet. Like, she knows sit and she knows here, and she knows a marker that means whatever you see in the environment, come back to me instead. But we're just starting on a lot of our different cues, because I'm actually spending my time building the behaviors that are really important. So like being able to be in the kennel and be okay, staying close to me when we're out walking. And I'm not worrying so much about getting skills on cue right off the bat.
And I think that's something we've talked about, and it's interesting as you raise multiple dogs, it's weird how sometimes those lines start to blur together in terms of starting to kind of teach those things that people think of more as skills. And it's interesting because I follow other people that have pet dogs and puppies on social media, and seeing there's almost this like race of like, how much can I teach my dog in a really short period of time? And what I really love about listening to you, Jackie, and also just watching our program and how it's evolved over the years, because I know when I first started years and years ago, it was very much an obedience focus in our puppy raising program. How much can we teach our puppies? They're little sponges. And so it's really, really cool to see how that's changing to building these, you know, incredibly well adjusted dogs, meaning that more of them are going to be successful. And for example, not being released for things like separation anxiety because they have kind of these skills on board. So, and I do think, so when you go back to those kind of like more kind of developmental deadlines and things that we're looking at, the one thing you didn't touch on, and I know probably this is because it just happens as like a natural part of your puppy raising now, is kind of the more typical house training that people think of, which is like teaching them to toilet outside, etc. And so I know all these things are interwoven, but do you want to just talk about that really briefly?
Yes, so she is not housebroken yet, which is not great on my part. However, you know, it's one of those things, like it's coming along and it's going to happen, but we are not there 100% of the time yet, and it is what it is, right? And I think that we really want to focus on the stuff that is not going well as the stuff that is. Knock on wood, luckily we very rarely have a number 2 in the house, but it's not uncommon still to have a pee accident in the house. So we're working away at that, and it'll come, right, Sawyer? So
And,
yeah.
and I think the other thing that I would say too is it's interesting, and I know this from my own years of puppy raising, is when it goes really well and you have a puppy that house trains really quickly and doesn't have accidents in the house, it's very easy to be like, I was great at that. I did a really good job of that. And I think what multiple dogs has taught me is that every dog is a little bit different. And, you know, we can use some basic principles and skills, but some dogs take longer than others. And I think some of that is just their own biology, is that some dogs, you know, take longer to kind of build that bladder control than others. And, you know, I laugh, my current puppy, I think he's had an accident in the house once and then is an adolescent now. And so he's decided that he wants to mark things. And I was like, what has even happened? So I think every dog is a little bit different. So, you know, those wins are great when we get them, but also it is very normal for a puppy this age to still be learning those house training skills.
And I think you hit the nail on the head where you said, you know, when things are going well, it's really easy to say that they should go well for everyone. And certainly I learned that as a mother too, right? Where somebody would find something really easy and it's really easy to stand in judgment of other parents, but it's one of those things that, you know, kind of we're all different. And I was way better at housebreaking puppies or house training puppies before I had kids. And now my attention is in so many places that, you know, it takes us a little while longer, and we just kind of have to be okay with that. That's why we have no carpet anymore.
Well, and I think too, it's one of those things, often people assume that you know, one thing or the other is better for puppy raising. And this is actually going to be a little plug for our puppy raising program too, is that a lot of times people assume you have to live in a house, or you have to have kids, or you don't have to have kids, and so some of our puppies are raised in apartments, some of them are raised by single people, some of them are raised in houses, some are raised with kids. And, you know, I think as Jackie's mentioning, you know, okay, now that I'm a mom and I also have 3 kids in addition to this puppy to keep track of, yeah, house training is going to take a little bit longer, but then also we have a puppy that is being raised around children, which builds a different set of skills that, you know, a dog that's raised in a home without might not have. And I think what's cool about that is every one of our clients is different and has a different lifestyle and household structure and living environment, et cetera. And so by having diversity in our puppy program and our volunteer community, it builds, Jackie talked at the beginning about kind of the spice rack of dogs. And so I think part of that is the genetic side that Jackie looks after, of like, how do we create all these different spices? But the other piece that contributes to kind of that spice rack of dogs to kind of choose from is also the diversity kind of within our volunteer community. So I'm just going to do a shout out that we are looking for puppy raisers right now. We've got lots of puppies coming down the pike in the next little bit. And so if you're interested in learning more about that, feel free to reach out to us. You can go to pads.ca/volunteer and there's information there. And thank you, Meredith. I just noticed that she posted the link in the comments on Facebook. So if you're watching on Facebook, you can see it there, and I'll just throw it in the comments or in the chat on Zoom if you're watching on Zoom. But before we sign off, I'm just going to invite folks. We've now shared a whole bunch of information with you about Sawyer and Jackie. And but if anybody has any last minute burning questions here, feel free to type them into the comment section on Facebook Live or into the Q&A box on Zoom.
Can I just jump in too, as people have a chance to type their questions? So I think one of the things as trainers that, because we're trainers, you'll see Sawyer on something like this and you'll say, wow, look how well she's doing. Hopefully you'll say, look how well she's doing. Or you'll see her in puppy class. And part of the reason that the trainers' dogs tend to look good is because we're very aware of where their limits are. And when we're in a situation where we're like, oh, they're not going to be successful, we're modifying things. And so it's not a case of the fact that our dogs are perfect. So I made a list of some of the things that Sawyer's struggling with. So I would be able to give kind of a fair accounting of where she is. And her list of struggles is as long as her list of things that are going well. So she's really struggling with greeting people. She gets way too excited. She's struggling with house training. She has a toy that she humps when she's overtired. She has had some fear of walking on different surfaces, which has been fairly consistent. She's had a little bit of fear of different objects. We talked about her fear of missing out, her barrier frustration. She eats horse poop if she gets the chance. And then one of the ones that, it would be really easy if I was not a trainer to be really concerned about is we've been paying so much value into the kennel that we had another dog home from work and the other dog came near her kennel and she growled at the dog. And so you're like, wow, like, do we have resource guarding, conflict over spaces right now? And like, the answer is yes to both of those things. But I just take it in as information, right? She's 4 months old. We are working towards having her ready to come into advanced training between 15 and 18 months old. And so she doesn't come out of the box perfect. If she does, then if she did, we could just kind of warehouse her until she was ready to go into training. So instead we just go, okay, so that's information. And then how do we adjust our training plan? So, the ones that would be the most concern to me as a trainer, the conflict over spaces. And so we just adjust by now as dogs are moving around the space, we mark that the dogs are moving by saying yes. And then we give her treats into her kennel. So the movement of the other dogs becomes a positive thing instead of a threat. With the barriers, we've talked about how we're dealing with that. And then with the object and the surface fear, we're focusing not so much on, yesterday she was scared of a rake. And so it's a rake raking. So it's not a case of you have to get really close to the rake raking and we're going to give you food. It's my husband stopped raking. He put the rake on the ground. He crouched down. He called her over. And then she got a chance to kind of explore it on her terms. And she was free to leave at any point. So, we're making small adjustments like that all the time to help set her up for success. But she's by no means perfect. She's just going to look good because kind of when she's rolled out to the public, we're putting her in a position to kind of put her best foot forward. And it's really hard as a trainer to say, I'm going to film this dog at something that they're struggling with because we don't want to set them up to repeat those struggles to try and get it on camera, because every time it gets repeated, it becomes kind of a more entrenched part of their behavior. So we're more likely to just jump in with a training plan and adjustments right away. But it certainly does not mean that, you know, when you see one of my dogs that I'm raising, or one of Nicole's dogs that she's raising, or one of Heather C's dogs that she's raising, that they aren't struggling just alongside everybody else's puppies.
I think one of the things too we've touched on a bit is, you know, the more dogs you work with, the more dogs that have been at the end of your leash, probably the quicker you can spot things that are problematic or that need kind of that like course adjustment, et cetera. And but the flip side of that for our puppy raisers that are watching, because I know there's a bunch of you on here today, is that we also don't want our people that are learning to feel discouraged by that either, if you aren't feeling like you're spotting those things right out of the gate, or even that you know how to deal with them if you do spot them. And so that's definitely why our staff is alongside you in this journey. So if you're seeing things that are problematic, or even if your trainer spots something in class and goes, hey, that might be something to work on, that it's somehow that you've missed something, but it's a learning process for all of us. And, you know, Jackie and I were talking the other day about how the longer we do this, actually, the more we realize we don't know, instead of the more we've learned. And I, you know, I think, you know, how many of us on our second or third dog are like, oh, I've got this whole thing figured out. And then we get to our fourth or a fifth or a sixth or a 10th dog, and we're like, oh my goodness, every dog teaches me new things. And so this little series is just a way to give a little bit of a glimpse into, you know, what puppy raising looks like, particularly for someone as experienced as Jackie, who's been doing this for the, well, let's be honest, her entire adult life. I was going to say the better part of her adult life, but I think Jackie started with us at 16. So she's been doing this for a very, very long time. So thank you, Jackie, for giving us the opportunity to kind of learn alongside you and Sawyer. And with that, I'm realizing that we are way over time, so I'm going to let folks go. I don't see any questions, which hopefully means we answered them all. But we will be back next month with Sawyer, and we're planning to kind of do monthly for the first kind of quarter, kind of the first, we're going to do 4 monthly ones, and then we'll probably jump into doing an update about every 3 months with Sawyer, because like humans, puppies start to change less over time as they get older. So we want to have something new to share with you each time we come on. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And I'm seeing a few comments, people thanking you, Jackie, for joining us. So I echo that. And we will see you all in a couple of weeks. Thanks so much. Bye, Jackie. Bye, Sawyer.
Okay, now for these. Yeah, for these.